Yeah.
What you think about that?
He didn't do it.
Out of nowhere, Charleston White stunned everyone by declaring David innocent, and he didn't just say it, he backed it up with shocking proof no one saw coming. The evidence he revealed flipped the entire case on its head, forcing people to question everything they thought they knew. It all began when news broke that a dismembered body had been found in a Tesla registered to rising music star David. Instantly, the internet erupted with accusations, wild theories, and outrage. Headlines branded him guilty before a trial had even started. Fans dissected his lyrics like confessions, while brands rushed to cut ties to protect their image. In the middle of the chaos, one voice cut through the noise. Charleston White, outspoken, controversial, and unafraid, boldly declared that the 20-year-old artist was not guilty. To him, the very fact that David hadn't been arrested yet was the clearest sign of his innocence.
Yeah. What you think about that?
He didn't do it.
Fuck out of here. All the evidence that's out there.
This wasn't just a throwaway remark. Charleston doubled down with reasoning he believed was undeniable. He argued that in America, especially for young black men, arrests are often made with far less evidence. If law enforcement truly had solid proof against David, Charleston insisted, he'd already be sitting behind bars. They lock us up with way less, he pressed. Sometimes they'll throw you in jail just to hold you. Charleston, the lack of charges wasn't a sign that prosecutors were quietly building a stronger case. It was proof there was no case at all. And to drive his point home, he pulled out one of his trademark analogies: gritty, blunt, and intentionally uncomfortable.
Hold on. If they find a dead body in me and your car, and this is our car, do you think they'll let me and you stay out like long? They come take an hour. So think about this.
Charleston's blunt comparison cut straight to the core of his argument. If an ordinary person had a body linked to their name, he said, they'd be in handcuffs immediately. The fact that David was still touring, still free, still moving openly without an arrest, Charleston argued, that spoke louder than any rumor. But he didn't stop there. He turned to the darker allegations swirling online, claims that David had been involved with an underage girl and connected to her brutal death. Social media was flooded with speculation, matching tattoos, leaked photos, even song lyrics fans twisted into supposed confessions. Yet Charleston brushed it all aside, dismissing the story as too clean, too perfect, and ultimately a setup.
So think about this. If they got all this information on him dating a minor, an underage kid, and she looked like a white girl, mixed girl, what did they let just stay free like this?
To Charleston, the story simply didn't add up. A young black artist allegedly tied to a missing 15-year-old girl, supposedly with physical evidence linking him to her death, yet not even detained, not even charged, not even held for questioning. That silence from law enforcement, Charleston argued, wasn't negligent. It was proof that David might not be the villain the world wanted him to be. And in classic Charleston fashion, he didn't shy away from making his audience uncomfortable. He highlighted the brutal way the body was found dismembered, hidden a crime that, in his eyes, required far more calculation and savagery than David seemed capable of. Could it have been a setup? Could someone else entirely be responsible? They say he butchered the body, sliced it up, Charleston said. And still, no arrest. As his words spread across X, YouTube, and Instagram, the internet split in two. To some, Charleston was defending the indefensible, standing up for a man whose own car contained a teenager's remains. To others, he was voicing the doubt they had been too afraid to express. Maybe this story wasn't so straightforward. Charleston didn't just drop a hot take and move one state on the case, repeating his point again and again. To him, David's lack of arrest wasn't just suspicious. It was impossible to reconcile with the story being told. And to drive it home, he reminded his audience of one of the most infamous trials in modern history, O.J. Simpson.
So you mean to tell me O.J. was found with a bloody glove, he was arrested immediately? Immediately, but all the circumstantial evidence they found on OJ, they placed it. So you mean to tell me they got all this on this, and he still get to move freely amongst America?
When Charleston invoked OJ, it wasn't just for shock value, it was to expose what he saw as hypocrisy in the justice system. If police are willing to lock men away on the weakest scraps of circumstantial evidence, then why, he asked, hadn't they done the same with David, who supposedly had far stronger proof stacked against him? From there, Charleston pushed into even darker territory. He began laying out alternative scenarios, ones that pointed to someone else entirely being behind the crime. Disturbing as they were, these what-ifs revealed just how deeply he doubted the official story.
So I'm saying, let me think outside the box. Maybe his mama done it. Maybe her mama done it. Set him up. Maybe one of them racist uncles or cousins don't like him. Maybe the other boyfriend done it. Maybe the pimp who was sex trafficking her for the last year when she ran away done it.
Charleston's arguments weren't polished courtroom statements, they were raw speculations hurled into the public like grenades. And that was exactly why his voice carried. He wasn't confined by evidence rules or cautious legal phrasing. Spoke in a way that resonated with ordinary people, blunt, messy, and emotionally charged. Through that lens, he painted a picture of a case that, in his eyes, simply didn't add up. He even ridiculed the idea that David's connection to the victim was obvious. One of the internet's favorite proofs was that both David and the 15-year-old shared a small SH tattoo on their index fingers, which fans insisted confirmed an intimate relationship. Charleston dismissed it outright. To him, a matching tattoo wasn't proof of anything, just another flimsy piece of speculation twisted into a damning headline. Then came the most controversial part of his defense, the moment that left many outraged. Charleston turned his criticism toward the girl herself, using language that was offensive and inflammatory, but also revealed his conviction that David was being scapegoated.
And I know this man, he wrong for calling her a little hoe, but she was. Little girl don't run away from home, little hoes and little...
Charleston's statement wasn't just harsh, it was explosive. Critics accused him of blaming the victim, of excusing David by attacking a child who could no longer defend herself. His defenders, however, argued he wasn't excusing anything, he was challenging the narrative, forcing people to ask whether the story was being told too neatly, too one-sided. In Charleston's world, uncomfortable questions were better than blind acceptance. Again and again, he drove home the racial angle, making it the backbone of his defense. They don't let black men get away with crimes like this. Not in America. That line ricocheted across social media. For Charleston, it was the ultimate logic. If a young black man had really committed something this horrific, he'd already be behind bars. The fact that David was still walking free meant something deeper was at play. That's what set Charleston apart. While others obsessed over tattoos, leaked photos, and eerie lyrics, he zoomed out to the bigger picture: race, power, and how the system behaves when the spotlight is on. By this point, he wasn't just questioning the case, he was dismantling it piece by piece, daring anyone to prove him wrong. His conviction carried the weight of someone who had spent his life studying injustice. To him, this wasn't only about one rapper. It was about a system that had never been fair to black men suddenly appearing too fair in a case seemingly built for a quick conviction. Charleston's reasoning was paradoxical. Most people looked at the body in David's Tesla, the alleged ties to a minor, and his haunting lyrics, and saw guilt. Charleston looked at the same facts and saw innocence, because if guilt were real, he argued, the system wouldn't hesitate. His defense wasn't that the evidence didn't exist. It was that there was too much evidence, and the absence of an arrest made it all suspicious. From there, he ventured into territory few dared to touch. What if this wasn't David's crime at all? What if it was a setup, meticulously staged to look airtight but riddled with holes? Those what-ifs turned his commentary into a viral spectacle. Some dismissed him as reckless and irresponsible. Others, though, couldn't help but nod along. After all, cover-ups and setups weren't unheard of in the world of celebrity scandals, and Charleston knew exactly how to keep that tension alive through it all. He kept circling back to one fact no one could deny: David was still free. So, we've got all this evidence, and you want me to believe she's dead, and the police still haven't arrested him? Charleston asked. To him, the answer was simple: David didn't do it. And that was the hill he was willing to die on. He knew it would spark backlash. He knew people would accuse him of downplaying the death of a child or excusing the inexcusable. But Charleston had never feared backlash. In fact, he thrived on it.Is social media tore itself apart, half calling his defense bold truth-telling, the other half calling it reckless trolling. Charleston only doubled down. He reminded audiences of every case they'd ever seen where young black men were dragged into courtrooms over whispers, arrested on suspicion, locked away on maybe and probably. And now here was a case stacked with DNA, tattoos, songs, cars, and headlines, yet no arrest. To Charleston, that wasn't coincidence. That was innocence. For millions watching online, his words were the kind that made you stop, replay, and wonder if maybe, just maybe, he had a point. Charleston's defense of David didn't come out of nowhere. To understand why his words went viral, why millions engaged with his claims, you have to understand the man himself. Because Charleston White isn't just another commentator with a microphone. He's a figure built on controversy, a man whose life has been steeped in crime, redemption, hypocrisy, and spectacle all at once. Born in 1977 in Texas, Charleston's life took a violent turn early. At just 14, he was involved in a fatal altercation outside a Foot Locker that left a man dead. Tried as an adult, he was convicted of murder and locked up until the age of 21. That moment branded him for life with a criminal record, and with a stain on his reputation that never washed away. To his critics, it proves he has no moral ground to stand on. To Charleston, it's the cornerstone of his story, a past mistake that fuels the fire behind his outspoken mission today. After his release, he tried to reinvent himself. He stepped into community activism, even founding an organization aimed at steering kids away from gangs and crime. For a while, it looked like he might carve out the path of a reformed man, someone who could use his painful past as a warning for the next generation. But Charleston was never built for quiet redemption. His personality, his energy, his need to provocate all pulled him back into the spotlight. Not as a saint, but as a firebrand.